Hello, everybody. So I'm Piera Van de Wiel. I am a singer-songwriter and also founder of Stronger with Music. And today I'm here with Emmy Marie. Hello, Emmy.
Hi.
She is a certified trauma-involved life coach. I would love for you to sort of start and tell us about you're a survivor. Tell us more of your story, and
Sure.
we would love to hear it.
Yeah, sure. So, my unique trauma that I experienced was an abusive relationship as a teenager from 9th grade all the way through 12th grade. So ages 15 to almost 18. And this is a really interesting intersection between what we know of child abuse and what we know of adult domestic violence. And the abuse I experienced was predominantly emotional, verbal, sexual, a little bit of physical, but since it wasn't, being beaten, like, as the main form of trauma, I never really understood that this was abuse until it was way too late. So a lot of my work is helping get the information out there of what trauma is, what it can look like, how it can show up in our lives, because there's so much devastating impacts of trauma that we can kind of dismiss if we think, oh, well, I wasn't like really abused, or like it wasn't that bad. The narrative.
Right, exactly. They dismiss it.
Yes.
So we want to talk about the subject of rejecting shame. So I want you to start off by telling me, what is shame?
Yes. So I'm incredibly passionate about this topic, and shame, I think it's really important to get clear on what shame is compared to guilt, because a lot of times those two are referred to as the same thing. Whereas guilt is, I did something that was wrong, I feel guilty about the thing that I did. Shame is, I am wrong, I am bad, I am ashamed of who I am. So it's much more personal and it's much more devastating. Essentially, shame is often imparted on victims of abuse or any kind of trauma directly by an abuser or by an abusive system or whatever the power is that is causing this trauma, through verbal abuse, emotional abuse, name calling, essentially getting that victim to feel like there is something wrong with them, because that is what keeps the perpetrator or the system in power, is
right.
If the victim believes there's something wrong with me. A lot of things that survivors survive, the traumas they've experienced, can be inducing of shame in and of themselves. So, for example, sexual assault survivors often feel very ashamed, especially if they feel like they let it happen, didn't fight back, or were simply unable to stop it. It can lead to this chronic feeling of, I'm dirty, I'm bad, something's wrong with me. And then I think the most sneaky one of how shame can develop is shame can actually be a coping mechanism and a way of understanding trauma that is illogical. So trauma, we are never supposed to be, we were not designed or evolved to withstand trauma and abuse. That was not a part of humanity. That wasn't the purpose of this. So let's get to the good news. It is possible to reject shame. So I like to call it rejecting shame, which is kind of saying, you hear a shameful thought come up and you are rejecting that. It takes a lot of conscious effort, but you can basically develop or cultivate a voice of self-compassion, which is really the antidote to shame.
I love that.
So, self-compassion meaning kindness, gentleness, seeing yourself not as a terrible person, but as someone who is doing their best, who is worthy of love, worthy of care. So that's easier said than done. So I have a few strategies to share for how to go about doing this.
Tell us.
Yes. So a really useful gateway that I find a lot of people are receptive to is, imagine how you would talk to someone that you really care about or you love. So they're having a really bad day, they're struggling with something, they're believing things about themselves, that they're bad or they're worthless. You would probably talk to them in a voice that is caring and gentle and encouraging and compassionate. You'd be reminding them of the good things about themselves, the things that you love about them. That's probably how you would treat someone. So just taking that information, okay, this is how I would treat that person, see if you can apply that to yourself. If that feels a little inaccessible for you, another one would be to take the statements that shame says to you. So, for example, shame might say, I deserved what happened to me, and just turning those completely upside down into something like, it wasn't my fault. I think it's important to notice what might be under the shame. So a lot of times shame can be protecting us from big feelings that are terrifying to experience, such as grief, rage, really intense fear. So noticing, is shame just trying to keep me blaming myself so I don't have to feel how devastating this trauma was? And if so, I'm not saying you need to suddenly plunge yourself into those emotions. That should be done, in a safe environment or relationship as much as possible. But just sort of noticing, like, maybe the shame is serving a purpose for me. Maybe I can do something different to get that need met, like self-compassion or even neutrality of, like, I'm a person that exists. I'm not a bad person, not necessarily a good person. I'm neutral. Starting there. And then I think one that is less about what you're doing in your own head, but more of a practical thing to consider is, are the people in your life contributing to shame? Because there's only so much progress you can make on your own if the people that are closest to you are overtly shaming you or otherwise contributing to this feeling of you're not good enough or you're bad. So all of this is a practice. This is something to write on a sticky note and post on your mirror or have in your journal.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. You could write one of the affirmations like, I am good, or I am worthy, I am safe, something like that. Or it can be more like, not today, shame, or like something like that's saying like shame is lying to you, or something like that. That's like, I'm not going to believe the cruelty coming from within my own mind. Whatever you need to remind yourself to keep practicing this, because it does get easier, and over time that self-compassionate voice can become just as automatic as the shameful voice. Even if they both exist, the self-compassion can be there as a stronghold of like, hey, I am worthy of healing, I'm worthy of happiness, I'm worthy of love, all the good stuff.
And worthiness, what a perfect word to end on. Thank you so much, Emmy, for chatting with me today. It's been honestly, thank you for your advice. Thank you for your advice from myself and to also to everyone. So really
thank you so much for having me, and thank you.